皆さんこんにちは、しんぺいです。今回のスペシャルゲストは、ベガスキャッシュグラインダーでありマインドセットトレーナー、そしてポーカーに関する書籍も、一冊執筆をしております、サーシャ・サットンさんにお越しいただきました。サーシャ、thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Yeah, me too. And you're living in Vegas currently.
I am.
Yeah, and for me and probably for all of Japanese people, like when I hear Vegas, I think about Disney World, just like flashing, like all the carnival, crazy stuff. What's like living in Vegas?
Kind of like Disney World.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It actually, when you're on the strip, it's kind of does feel like that. I mean, it's a little bit like Times Square in New York City.
Yeah.
When I lived in New York, I rarely went to Times Square. It was kind of more for a tourist destination. But playing poker in Vegas, I am primarily on the strip. So I do experience that intensity, and I often meet tourists who have that very wide-eyed reaction to the city, because it can feel I've been here for 4 years now, so I'll never really have that innocent feeling of that wow factor. But I will say that waking up every morning, I'm still pinching myself. Like, I'm shocked that I moved here. I'm grateful that I get to have this weird poker life. And I walk into casinos and I'm just amazed that they're like my living rooms. So I have some of that.
Yeah.
Some of that, yeah.
I think the first time I went to Vegas when I was 14, I went there because I saw Ocean's 11. The rebooted version, and I wanted to see the Bellagio, the fountain.
Yeah.
And again, I was wow, yeah. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine living there, and that is your workplace, and it's interesting.
Right, and it's interesting to see I love the mechanics of how the city recreates its spectacle week after week after week after week, right? So on a smaller scale, the Bellagio fountains, the Bellagio Conservatory inside, where 4 times a year they create a spectacle and an environment inside that is just absolutely breathtaking. And the creativity there that happens year after year after year. And then, for example, Christmas displays at the Wynn or at the Aria, at some of the more prestigious hotels, that creativity happens here. And I'm always just interested in the mechanics of the city, and I'm always talking to workers and asking questions and just watching and just seeing it unfolding. And then how the city redesigns casinos, or infrastructure is changed, and then certainly the evolution of poker rooms, although they don't change all that frequently, but that's always interesting to see. Or new, like when Bally's became the Horseshoe, where the World Series takes place, they redid their poker room, and it's just beautiful. And so every poker room has its aesthetic. And when you play here, whether you're here just for the series and you're playing just a little bit, or you're playing here all the time, every day, like me and many others, you find the spaces separate from the question of rake and your levels, but you find the aesthetic of rooms that you like. And in Vegas, you have a pretty broad, not a huge choice, but a pretty good choice, a decent choice.
Yeah, if you're living every day, not living, playing there every day, and small rakes or even drinks, and how waitress or the servers approach to you, and or the quality of dealers, that matters, right?
Oh my God, yes. For me, the best rooms are the best managed in terms of the staff working there, how the quality of the staff that's managing the room every single day, and the speed of the dealers. Yeah. These are my 2 criteria. And there are rooms where, especially as a woman in poker, this is a big deal, because I get a lot of respect at the table. And most women do, and some women don't, and things happen, and men have gone off on me on occasion. Women have written to me because I've blogged in poker and across several platforms, and women have written their stories to me. Tournament women have some pretty awful things happen to them. So if I know that the room has my back, it just makes a huge difference. And I've played in rooms where I wasn't always sure about that. So when I say management, I mean, poker rooms are just like the the word from like fairy tales in English is cauldron,
Okay.
right? Poker rooms are cauldrons, like they're big vats of emotion, okay? And so it's a high wire act. For example, at the Aria, you have 5, 10, 1, 3 tables. You have 2, 5 tables. You have 5, 10, the occasional 10, 20 table. Then you have some tournaments on the upper level. Then in the main private room in the back, you have, say, a 3,000, 6,000 mixed game, okay? With all the elite players in the world coming through Vegas every day and hanging around and playing these huge games. So I say that because there's a lot of money on the table.
Yeah.
So for example, the management team at the Aria is at the highest levels of professionalism because they're so well trained. They're very calm with all this money in the room. They're absolutely responsive to women in the game. And they're the way their client service, the way they talk to us, the way they manage problems. You want to have a team on hand that is just working at the highest levels of professionalism. And that's what I look for.
Yeah, definitely. And during this interview, we're definitely going to touch on women's specific subject. Yeah. But before that, I want to give audiences your background. So currently, which room you're playing and what stakes you're playing.
Okay. I am currently a 2-5 cash grinder. In New York, I came up underground in New York before I moved to Vegas. And in New York underground, I played 1-2, 1-3, 2-5, and 5-5, 25 games privately. In Vegas, I played primarily 2-5, some private games, and a little bit of 1-3 when I first got here. But I'm a 2-5 grinder. And my favorite Vegas rooms are the Wynn and the Aria. And I do sometimes play at the Bellagio when necessary. I played a lot at the Bellagio during the series in 23 because other casinos had their own smaller tournaments running. So cash games during the day were less available. The Bellagio 2-5 game is a particular game because it has a cap buy-in. So it's capped at 500. The Aria is capped at 1,500 for the 2-5, so it plays bigger. A lot of folks don't want to play a cap. They don't want to play 100 blind stack because for a lot of us, and I resisted it too because I play cash because I like to play deeper. I mean, it's not just why I play cash, but I love to play deeper. So I had to really learn how to, a friend of mine laughed at me when I said this, but I consider 100 blinds a short stack. Okay? So he said, "You're crazy." I go, "Well, whatever." But I had to learn just kind of how to play a short stack at the Bellagio. And then I realized that it's just so unique to that room, right? When you are buying in, like there are guys in Vegas that they literally, and folks you would misunderstand, right? Older gentlemen sometimes who are moving very slowly, who may look very poor or whatever, and they reach, they're not really nicely dressed. I have no judgment about it. It's just hilarious to me. And they reach in the pocket and they pull out a wad of cash. That's like millions of dollars in their hand, right? But they just pull out a wad of cash and they're just flipping off $500, $100 bills, right? To rebuy and rebuy and rebuy. So at the Bellagio, the dynamic with the cap buy-in is that somebody who busts and rebuys, it's a little bit less painful to their wallet or psychologically that they're rebuying, say, 500. As opposed to most of the tourists at the Aria, for example. I play less at the Wynn because it's 9-handed. Post-COVID, the Aria and Bellagio are both now 8-handed. And I especially love the Aria because often we're playing 7-handed, 6-handed. Once we're down to 6-handed for short periods of time, it's almost like an online game, and I love that feeling. But if you're rebuying for 500 as opposed to 1,000, I think there's a psychological difference there. That's number one. And number two, there's something I call like, I'm not going to swear on your podcast, but I call it fuck it money. at the
Oh, yeah,
Bellagio,
yeah, 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 yeah.
right? So if you get down to like, if you have a $500 stack and then a 100 blind stack, and then you're down to like, 50 blinds, or you have 250, or even like, yeah, say like 275, 250, 200, somehow in your mind, that's not real money anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you can obviously, you can top off your stack, but a lot of players are just like, who cares? So they do these who cares shows with like pocket eights or whatever it is.
Yeah,
So there's that.
basically a go big or go home kind of thing, right? Like, why do I have like
Kinda,
this? Just why not? Just double
yeah,
up. Yeah,
right. And all they have to do is top off if they whatever. But so there's both the psychological leverage of like rebuying for less, and then people just throwing shorter stacks in the middle with not much equity. And those two combined, and there was just so much money on the table during the series. So it was a good season, as they
yeah.
say.
Cool, cool, cool. Okay, so can you give me the worst poker room in Vegas?
Caesars.
Oh, okay. That's a big one.
Mhm.
And I guess you had a little bit of personal, bad experience. No?
Caesars, I really don't like to like badmouth any casinos
Yeah,
ever,
yeah.
but Caesars has the worst chairs in Vegas.
Oh,
I think some of the dealers are very good. It's an old room. I will say the good news is that it has it's one of 4 casinos left that don't charge a promotional rate, right? So when you go into a room like the Horseshoe renovated is beautiful, but they're charging a promo rate. So they're catering to tourists. So they're paying bad beats and high hands and all that kind of stuff. So that's like a max 7 coming out of each pot. And
wow.
especially at 1-3, it's a tremendous amount of money.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah. So the 4 casinos that do not take a promo rate and are max 5 are Caesars, Wynn, Aria, and Bellagio. I'm not sure about Resorts World. I've never called them, but they possibly could be at max 5. But so the good news is Caesars doesn't charge a promo rate. They were for one summer and then they gave it up. But I just, the chairs are terrible. The tables are old. The water is awful. And everything about their, people work very hard there, but I can't believe I ever took that room seriously. So that's all. However, if you're coming, if you have audience members, folks listening to your podcast who are coming through and they want to start out their cash life and they want to be in much, much softer games, I would definitely send cash beginners to Caesars. They're just not going to get roughed up as much.
Oh, so are you saying that the Caesars is more softer, easier?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. So
yeah, absolutely.
Those information is the reason why I'm doing this, because a lot of
good.
100%, because a lot of Japanese people are eager to do what you're doing right now. They go to LA Commerce, or they go to Vegas, or some people go to South Korea or Macau, and Philippines. Australia is a big destination too, but people actually really trying to make it nowadays. And I know I'm more like online players, so I can give like which online site is good and whatnot, but like something like that, and a local someone's already doing it and giving actually gold mine. What you just said is just gold mine. You're going to see a flock of Japanese people in the Caesars now. I can okay, one thing I can say, I'm not sure if it's still great, but when I went there last time, I was 2012, and Caesars buffet is amazing.
Right.
Yes,
that's true.
Yeah. So
it's the Caesars properties generally are somewhat neglected. The Wynn and the Aria are 2 of the most beautiful casinos in Vegas. The Wynn, I would say, the top of the list. And there's just that vision of that casino. Bellagio has some beautiful parts, is much older. But the Caesars properties are often a little more, I consider them kind of the stepchildren of Vegas casinos. And yeah, the hardest rooms are Wynn and the Aria. The 5-10 game at the Aria is one of the hardest games in Vegas. I mean, I've heard folks who play high stakes in Vegas who consider the 5-10 Aria game harder than like a 50-100 game in some rooms here, because the higher you go, often the richer the players and their skill set is not necessarily great. So yeah, the win in the Aria, if for your audience members who are wanting to just get some hours in and feel the rhythm of the game, and even rooms that are charging a promo rate. I mean, if folks have the bankroll or enough skill to sit 2-5, once in a while to go to folks speak highly of the Venetian. I've only played there a couple of times. They have a promo rate on their games. The MGM games are uncapped, but they have a promo rate. So it's kind of a trade-off. But Caesars is the best of both worlds because they don't charge a promo rate and the games are softer and folks can be there and not just feel the kind of as much of a professional pressure.
I think because of the movie The Hangover, I think after that, I think Caesars got certain destination, right? Like when people ask about what kind of hotels do you know in Vegas, people might say Bellagio, MGM, big names, and maybe they're gonna go Caesars, not Aria or not Wynn, because of the such iconic feelings to that the establishment. And maybe that's why it's slightly softer, because a lot of young guns, not knowing much of poker, and they go into the casino section and just why not give poker a try?
Absolutely. I mean, the iconicness of Caesars, or what was the other one you mentioned?
The MGM Grand or the
Yeah,
Bellagio.
that notion. The Bellagio. I mean, Bellagio is still holding on. There's some serious poker that gets played there. But the Caesars name, I mean, the notion of it being iconic, I think is a very dated idea.
Yeah.
But
That's
it's
great.
okay. It's just like, again, I'm grateful, like, notwithstanding my Caesars bashing, I'm grateful for every hardworking dealer in that room.
Yep.
And one of the dealers helped me immensely when I first got to Vegas. And, I would say the floor is managed well. And it's a very pleasant room, but I just don't appreciate poker players sit for we sit for a long time, and I don't appreciate a billion-dollar company just not having decent chairs, for example.
Yeah. So, well, it's funny that in Japan we have a lot of tournament circuit right now, and most of the people have to sit down one of those. We call it pipe chair. It's just like like a plastic
folding chair.
Actually, some of them had to sit on a folding chair. Yes, some places do, and some places like stuck up. It's not like a gaming chair, or it's nothing comfy. So yeah, well, I get it. I mean, like, I've been sitting in online players, and you have to sit for 10, 12, 16 hours, if the game is great, and you're back in everything. So I get it. It's a legitimate reason why you put the off the list of the top
and
4.
also I would just say, this is just a very tiny detail, but I bought a cushion from Target here,
I know Target.
Target. Yeah. So I bought a cushion from Target for like $11.99 or whatever, and I carry it with me to every game I go to. It transforms every crappy chair in Vegas. And my spine just doesn't fit any chair that I ever sit in. The chairs at the Aria are pretty good. The chairs at the Wynn are okay. They're fine. But like, if you have a cushion with you, even if you're younger, especially if you're going to play a tournament, I would say, because I can get up anytime I want as a cash player. But that cushion for me, like, oh my God, I sit down and my back is happy, my body is happy. It was a beautiful $11.99 investment.
Oh, well, and I guess I'm gonna ask an additional question, because you just came up with a great idea. Anything that you should carry? Like, what's the best things that you should carry? Like a cushion, sure. Maybe earphones, sure. But like something else. Is there anything else?
No.
Okay.
I have snacks with me sometimes. But the good news about the poker rooms is they give you $2 an hour as comp. So that's food points you can use, for example, wherever, because the casino, I don't know about Caesar's, but I know Aria and Wynn give $2 an hour.
Mhm.
So that adds up, and then you can eat for free all over the casino.
That's
So
amazing.
sometimes there'd be snacks in between meals and stuff, but yeah, nothing else really. Just I finally went wireless. I came into the 21st century, so I was very excited about
That's interesting because if you wearing that, that can be used against you, right? If someone else is talking to you and giving you certain advice. Have you had any incidents that you're getting cheated or colluded or something like that?
Let me take the first part of that first, and I'm really glad you raised that. I actually read something. I just finished Alex Fitzgerald's Exploitative Plays in Live Cash, which is a brilliant text and on my list of recommended poker books now. Alex recommends just wearing a headset, wearing headphones, and not even listening to music, because it makes people feel like you're kind of unapproachable, and they think you're not listening, you can't hear, you're listening to music, and if they make comments about your play, it's kind of a wealth of information. In terms of when you say people talking to me, I never speak to people about my hands, about anything that happened. Nobody would dare give me advice, but if they did, I would literally not even talk to them. I would literally be silent.
Yeah.
So that's never an issue in terms of, and people will often say, oh, she can't hear you or whatever. I can hear everything, even because I have my music on low. I'm not listening to like heavy metal, and usually I just have one ear pod in, whatever it's called. So I can hear, I have incredibly good hearing, and I can hear everything. So people all think, oh, she can't hear you, or she's not listening, or people will say to me, miss, did you have the flush? Did you have the flush? Did you have the flush? Or whatever. Occasionally that happens, and I just ignore them. What one writer calls 6th Street, right? Which is once the hand is over, and then people start talking about their hands.
Tommy Andrew.
Right? Right. So not necessarily to me, right?
Yeah.
But I'm always turning my music down on 6th Street.
Okay.
I'm always turning it down, and I'm always listening. I never miss any of it. I don't miss a word that gets said. And in terms of cheating and collusion, I've never experienced it. I don't feel like I've never had any weird moments here. I had a friend in a game once at a 2-5 game at the Aria accused 2 guys of collusion and kind of cheating and weirdness. It was a huge accusation, and I would never make that accusation. I would just leave the table or whatever. In terms of the only thing I will sometimes, what sometimes players do, like recreational players do, like they want some attention for their decision. So if they folded, they want someone to see whether it was a good idea or a hard idea or whatever. So they'll have a friend on their left, and they'll flash their cards to their friend over and over and over again. And they're privileging that player with that information in terms of the cards that they open, right? At that point, I will gently say to the dealer, it's show on, show off. And if the dealer doesn't act on it, I will get the floor. I don't like to create any tension at the table. I don't. I do my best not to, but or playfully will say, oh, I want to see, can I see? Or please show the table. I will say to the dealer, please turn those cards over. And so players don't even realize that it's an issue, because they're not living off the game, even if they have a lot of money in front of them, even if they're very rich. They're recreational players, and they don't take seriously the information warfare that is poker. And so they are really sharing. They're giving somebody a lot of information about what they're opening. And so I will try to have that enforced. I mean, the dealer should enforce it. And in terms of the larger cheating scandals, or what you mentioned, some of it has been real. Accusations are made. People may feel like they're being cheated. I have friends who are high stakes players. I have friends who are high stakes game runners. They've experienced weird things from time to time in their careers. And yes, it does happen in private games, I think mostly. I have no doubt that there is no there's no cheating going on in major casinos because of the risk of ruin would be tremendous.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe I don't see any players being privileged. I see what my card distribution is. I never have an issue.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, because lately we had such a huge scandal in online scene, and and also I heard and a lot of things in the live poker too. So I was a little interested to that.
Yeah. Again, I don't get involved with it. I don't care. I know it happens. I take it seriously. I've never felt touched by it. My friends who are running games and running higher stakes games, both in private games, in casinos, and in their homes, I think maybe the harder part of some of those, I think it's easy for gamblers to feel suspicious and to feel paranoid. I think that's an easy feeling for a lot of players, especially as there's more money at stake. I would say that the harder issue is not so much whether there's technology involved or spyware or whatever it is, but like if you're running a game and you have a piece of two of those players sitting, that's debated a lot. And I think that's just a very weird dynamic.
Okay. Yeah, because even chess or something like that, or we have more like a professional board games that we play at the highest level, and they don't allow any gadget like earphone or headset or anything like that. But poker is something weird. Even the World Series, you can wear that and play, right? So I think that's the interesting dynamic. Why poker is allowing some sort of electronic gadget that can be used, even like a glasses too. Like there's a I don't know, something like that is interesting. And poker is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I met a guy at the Aria 2 summers ago, and he was like, he didn't play much poker, but he loved the World Series, and he was like, yeah, when Chris Moneymaker won, like that was amazing. And I go, yeah. He goes, I mean, I'm sure it was fake and it was staged, but it was amazing. What do you say to that? Nothing. There's nothing to say. I went, like it was just in his mind, it was like a conspiracy theory. And there's nothing you can say, right? It's just the most ridiculous thing you could say about the World Series of Poker when millions of people are watching, and like Chris Moneymaker's victory was staged.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay.
Maybe he was, deep into Reddit sub thread and stuff, right?
Exactly.
Just wow.
Right. And I asked a friend of mine who's very psychologically astute. I said, why do you think somebody would say that? He said, because if he's convinced that everything is rigged, he never has to try. He never has to take a step forward into his poker life and risk being a success or a failure because he's convinced himself that it's all fake. So he never has to, he can just stay in the sidelines and just say, oh, that's rigged. So that's fine for him. It had nothing to do with me. I just found it hilarious.
Or maybe he has actual information. Who knows? Right?
Oh, come on.
Yeah, well, so before this interview started, you said that you prepared for me 5 pages of answers, and I would like to go through the questions.
Come on.
Yeah,
Okay,
but how's your 2023 last year compared to any other years?
My life here was very weird.
Okay.
So I moved from New York City to Vegas in 2020.
Yeah.
3 weeks after I moved to Vegas, the city closed. Every casino closed, okay, for COVID. So I'm here in a new city going through a pandemic or whatever. I'm like, wow, this is great. Las Vegas Boulevard was so empty. You could literally walk into the middle of Las Vegas Boulevard, and just stand there for like 5 minutes until you were hit by a car. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, it was a ghost town. It was like Disneyland with no people.
Yeah,
Really,
or like a movie set, right?
A movie set, exactly,
Yeah.
precisely, yeah. So COVID happened, and then waiting for the casinos open, but we didn't have vaccines yet. And then I finally got vaccinated and was playing a little bit, and then a new variant would come through. And we have more information now, but I had a lot of fear about the disease. I'm older, and I was terrified. I mean, like all of us, right? So I finally got vaccinated, and then I was playing a little bit more. Then I went into 2022 and then I had COVID 3 times in 22. So there was just a kind of a stop and start for me. So finally in 23, I had a straight shot at hours and a dedicated focus and time commitment. And also in addition to that, I had leaks here, really more mental game leaks and a learning curve playing in a casino environment coming from underground games in New York, and starting so late in my life really that I didn't expect. So in 23, I'm kind of like skipping to the end of the story, but I resolved a lot of those leaks, had some tremendous mental game victories in 23. So in addition to just having a healthy, normal poker life on a daily basis, I had all of this just mental game, just my mindset work coming to fruition and resolving in the most beautiful way. And then toward the end of 23, I established a coaching program for mindset training because I'm very, very good at it. So 23 for me was just a lot of coming off of the first 3 years here was pretty wonderful.
Yeah, well, that's an amazing story. I'm not sure if it was 2020 or 21, but I've seen in a casino, I think it was Vegas. They're playing 4 tabling, had plastic shields, and did you play that game or not really?
No, I did not.
But
I have pictures of it. If you want it for your files, I'm happy to send you a photo.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sad. The dealers were masked and then they had gloves on and they looked so constrained and then nobody could hear each other. It was the saddest thing I've ever seen. I would literally just like stand at the rail watching hands, you know. I use online poker as like my home gym. And I've always played micro stakes online as my home gym, even in New York. And so I was playing online and that was great. But watching those games and just staring at them and just watching and longing to be seated, but I waited a long time to play.
Yeah, well. And also I think it was started by European casino somewhere. I think British tournament, but that they replaced the dealer button with a hand sanitizer. And I thought that was like an amazing idea.
God.
Yeah. But
really
yeah,
good.
it's such a weird time. Yeah. But do you still see people masking or it's just like gone?
Yeah, me.
Oh, you? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Do you
Yeah,
think?
I never stop masking when I play. The dealers still mask, some of them. Many of the Asian players mask.
Yep.
The older Asian players definitely mask. And I mask. I never take my mask off, partly because I don't want to take in the secondhand smoke.
Mhm.
Although the better casinos have better filters. But COVID loves my body and COVID is here.
Yeah.
And that's all.
And
So
al-
yeah, and most people, and also it's great because I love covering my face when I'm playing poker. It's a
Yeah.
no-brainer. I
Yeah.
mean, why wouldn't everybody do it? I can't understand.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like, it's apart from the protection. But if you can do this and do that, right? It's like a ninja style. It's better.
It is absolutely need to know. I played with a kid the other day who was like young European guy, and he just had your look there. He was masked. He had his hoodie up. I don't wear hoodies, and I actually should wear scarves because I have a terrible. Nobody's paying attention, but I have a terrible neck pulse tell.
Oh,
A terrible one. Yeah, you could see it from Mars. But men mostly have like the chest heaving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like for men, it's a physical here, but I have this, which I really, really should wear a scarf. But yeah, as long as I just have a mask and but yeah, the ninja thing. I mean, and especially some guys are still wearing dark glasses, and strangely enough, I think it's effective. It's not. I do think that the whole notion of poker face is a little bit of a cliche because I think it's mostly there's more information in your hands. When you're playing live, like I call it the poker hands, not so much the poker face, and that's where my eyes are constantly scanning for data.
Yeah. There's research on the Stanford Bridge that I don't know if you're aware of that, but if the subject was shown poker player's face, entire upper body, and just focusing on the hand, and all the subject had no previous poker background, but they were the highest accuracy. How hand was stronger was the group that the only looking at the hands. So hand.
Seriously?
Yeah. It was.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It was
Yeah,
about
I
10
didn't
years
know.
ago. The research came out. Yeah.
Right. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm even aware. Like I'm aware of when I see people, I call it a stutter step. When people bet and their fingers kind of trip over the chips, so they stutter step in there. Stutter step refers to the feet. But when their fingers are stutter stepping, I can always feel like energetically, I'm sure you can too when you're playing live, like when the bet is just weak, it's weak. So I can feel it sometimes in myself occasionally. I'll look at the way a bet hits the felt and I'll just be like, God damn it. If anyone's paying attention, it lacked a certain,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or how much chips you use. Maybe like the person is betting, let's say $200. If you're betting $200 chips, it looks like small, or betting 40 of like $5 like stock, just like big stocks. It's
Right.
more intimidating. So maybe that's like a strategy too.
For some people, that definitely is. Absolutely. I know somebody who will use red chips up to like 75, and then a combination of green and black and red chips after that.
Mhm.
I just like the efficiency because I don't cut my chips that well. I will sometimes pull a hole. It's more, I just kind of like the efficiency of like 3 green chips, a black and a green, or a black 2 red. I love guys who do they do like these combos. Like you go to a hamburger joint and you buy like a hamburger and fries and a Coke. So the chip version of that is like they'll do like a black chip and 3 greens and 2 reds, and then boom, it's just like boom, it just hits the felt. It's so beautiful.
Amazing.
I love
Yeah.
the hamburger combo chips. Yeah.
And before we start recording and this actual interview, you were mentioning some Asian women had a really elegant way of chip stacking and putting chips. So maybe you had certain, I'm not saying fetish, but you like to seeing something like chips are moving. Would you say that?
Fetish is a fantastic
Yeah. Okay.
word. No, I love that. No, I absolutely do because I'm just envious. And I was going to pay one of the dealers that I know to just sit with me because I looked at YouTube videos and I'm not bad at it, but I want to be like amazing at it. Right. And so I just have this like fear of failure. It's ridiculous. But yeah, when I saw this woman cutting her chips, I was absolutely like so jealous, not of her ranges, but of her chip cutting.
Yeah. Well, by the way, the women had a 99 VPIP, so yeah, definitely not, definitely not. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly give extra information about the pulse tell. So there's a German professional player, Fedor Holtz, and he was saying that how to look at the pulse tell. So if the person's bluffing, and if you look at the pulse is always stays high because he's under pressure. But if the person has nuts or something, initially they get really excited, so the pulse goes really high. But as the time goes down, because the person is going to relax because he has nuts. So if you look longer and the pulse stays high, it's bluffing, it goes down, maybe had a good hand. So.
I think that's a brilliant interpretation. I'm going to start to practice that. For me, I feel like I'm just I'm just over adrenalized a lot when I play, and I work on it all the time. And I know over time it's going to be different. I know that I can I'm going to think about that because I'm intimately aware of my heartbeat, even if I'm nutted. Because I feel like it doesn't really ever slow down. But I'm going to look at other people and say thank you.
Okay, that's great.
Helpful, yeah.
Yeah.
I love Fedor.
Yeah, Fedor's great. He's still like 28, 29, something like that.
He's still 20. I love the way you said that. He's still.
Yeah. He's still.
Yeah, he's so young. No, he's just so young.
Yeah. And most of his big wins is when he was like early 20s. So when I look at his pictures, he's like, yay, and just like, dude, he's like a kid. Yeah, it's amazing. So did you go to not actual tournament? Did you go to side games of the World Series?
Not at the Horseshoe. I never play the side games at what was Bally's and now the Horseshoe. I never play those. I never play in those locations. I don't like the lighting. I don't like the chairs. I don't like any of it. They're very huge cavernous rooms, which I think are great for tournament energy and whatever. I would argue that the whole city is a side game during the series. And so it's just, there are players everywhere. There are just tournament players everywhere trying to push me around. And yeah, so I wait for them. I lay in wait for them. And yeah, so yeah, there's the action here, not just in the series. Like we just had the CES Electronics Conference came through. 13,000 people came to Vegas for 5 days. And many of them very generously came to play poker with us. Ooh. And from all over the world, and left all of their American dollars behind. So that was excellent. And yeah, so we just have these big events that kind of supercharge the poker rooms. Like we have Super Bowl coming up in February, the various conferences, obviously Formula, and then the series and all that. So I have friends who play in the cash games at Horseshoe. Mm-hmm. They do okay there, but there's just pretty much action everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. Vegas is one of the big tourist destination and a lot of events. I'm a UFC guy, mixed martial arts. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, UFC, I think they host every month or so at the T-Mobile Arena, and I'm sure that a lot of people just come in there. But would you say, definitely, but like during a World Series is the softest, most fun for a cash game player?
I don't know about softest, but definitely, I mean, people, I remember years ago, I think that Doyle Brunson, maybe he wrote this in Super Systems or he just said it in an interview, that they actually started the World Series just to bring, to create a lot of action in the cash games years in the 70s or whatever. But I mean, the tournament players today, not every single one of them, but many of them are fairly studied players.
Oh, yeah.
So, people think that, tournament players are going to bust out and they're going to be tilted and they're going to sit down at your cash game and lose a lot of money. Not exactly. But they have certain habits. I immediately identify tournament players, even outside of the series, because, for example, they play out of the blinds 95% more often than I do, for example. Yeah. And they're playing a whole range of hands that I wouldn't even consider opening outside of the blinds, but they're playing those hands. So that immediately, the minute I see somebody opening a lot of hands out of the blinds, that's one thing. And some tournament players are playing a very, very overly tight style in cash. I'm a tight, aggressive player, and most serious players in Vegas poker rooms are playing a very quiet game. But some of the tournament players I've seen are even tighter than me, which is not profitable because the minute they open a hand, the table folds or whatever. But some of it is just range, range construction, and also blind play. And once I notice that, and kind of see how, for example, how low their unsuited hands are and how early they're opening those hands, and once I establish some of that data, but the good news about tournament players, the harder news for me, is that they tend to be a little stickier on thin value, which they have to be in tournaments, as I'm sure you will know. So that always is kind of shocking to me. They're calling river bets with middle pair or even bottom pair. Yeah, that's something I'm mindful about as well.
Yeah, maybe they're not really used for short stuck play, right? And 100 BB.
Right.
Yeah. So
at the Bellagio.
Yeah. Or maybe like a deep stuck 200, 300. So maybe that's something that you had advantage over those tournament players.
Right, exactly, because they're used. For them 40 blinds is a big stack and whatever. And two guys I played with who sat down who were, just like full of themselves, and I was crushing flops against this one player, and and then I bluffed him hard, representing a flush, and he actually folded to me, and that's where, being an older woman, I get away with murder. And then he but he just was kind of a bully, and he felt like he could overbet turns, and I was just going to be so frightened. I'm just like, this is Vegas. This is the Bellagio. Like, who do you think you're dealing with?
Yeah, yeah.
But it was some of that happened. And you play poker through the lens of ego, and it's gonna bite you in the ass, so to speak.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, definitely. Poker is something like you can smile and you can chat nicely, but you just like stabbing, and from the back and everything. Because I always say like I'm really nice. I'm like this in a poker room on tables, but I'm literally reaching my hand into your wallet and just doing this. And not nowhere in the world allows you, but in the poker you can't get away with that. So.
No, but what you're saying, and you're right, it is a weird thing. It's a weird thing. The guy walked into a room recently with me. I was finishing my session. I never open Jack 10. I only open hands with showdown value out of the blinds generally. I looked down at Jack 10 suited out of the small blind. I opened it for no good reason. And the flop was Jack 10X, and he had aces.
Oh.
So I cracked his aces, and he went a little crazy on me and got verbally abusive. And he had just sat down. And 10 minutes after he sat down, $1,000 from his wallet went into my wallet. It's a weird dynamic. But when I say that you can't play poker through the lens of ego because it's a backstabbing, I mean that I had another player recently who was like around 95% VPIP. I thank the universe that day for having him on my right. And at some point I do. It hurts my heart a little bit when people really don't understand how to play poker and they come into very hard rooms. And I sometimes I do some kind of prayers of compassion. They're called Tonglen prayers.
Okay.
I do send them. I really do. Because when I say you play through the lens of ego and it could backfire on you, I'm extremely competitive, but I don't want to destroy you. I don't want to destroy you. And that's different for some men that I've played with.
I think
they have that crushing gene. They have that ego thing, that testosterone that kicks in. And I just think it's male.
Okay.
And some of it I think is inexperience or true. Like, I think that the male pros that I know and respect are present and grounded, and they also are not looking to crush you. I think it's kind of a little bit of an immature feeling.
They're
Do you
just
understand?
yeah. They're just taking that plus EV spot. They're not trying to, show I'm who's the alpha, right? That's the mentality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. No, I love that. Yeah. It can be that gets a little bit. I see guys get tangled up in each other's alpha energies or vying for that alpha. I see it all the time, and I just I never see women. I see women being aggressive. I see women being competitive, but I never see that alpha thing going on. I never, ever do. And maybe I will someday.
Well, you can slap my face if I'm being a little sexist, but I think when I see a women tends to like to group up and they kind of do it from behind, not like, face to face. I don't know if it's a Japanese things, but that's what I feel like. Women, when let's say in the house or some neighbors, they have like a little chat and they talk about someone. Let's talk about someone behind. I think it's something more subtle. I think
it's a matter. I agree. Yeah, it can be. I agree. Yeah, it can be more subtle. I mean, the women playing poker and cash are so few that their expertise. The game how can I say this? If you're playing cash as a woman in major Vegas rooms, you're not subtle at all.
Oh yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. I did play with this one woman who was so quiet and so passive. And she was weirdly powerful because she was so sticky.
Ooh.
And she had these gentle, long fingers. I was betting like her for like a week after that. I thought, I want to be just like her. You know what I mean? So she would just call you, right? And just like place her bet so gently. Call. She never let go. And she was so quiet and so passive, but she was really good.
Oh, she was good. Okay,
So
I was
she
about to
was
say
good, yeah.
she's maybe like a degenerate, just like
Oh, no, 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 no. She was just very like, she had no ego. She was like negative ego. Like her affect was negative ego. And she was very, very, the minute she like called my bets, I'm like, oh God, I mean, it's like, you could never get her off hands. You could never raise her off of anything, she just held on. She's probably a tournament player.
So you only see very few women in a cash game scene. When you play against another woman, do you immediately have certain, not connection, but like, oh, there's another woman? It's just different dynamics. Do you feel that some certain energy?
It's a really good question. Not entirely. I'm very welcoming to women in the game. I'm very welcoming to other women. I'm very protective of other women. If men are being flirtatious with a woman, which is on the border of just very sexist behavior, it's not okay to talk to a woman through a sexist lens at a poker table. I don't care. It's not a bar. It's not a club. It's a poker room. So I get very sometimes protective of younger women who sit down, and if men are, but I'm sometimes more afraid of the female players. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I don't actually, it's really player dependent. I play with this one woman who's very sweet and very rich and very bad. And I love having her at the table. She's like my favorite whale. She's a total whale. I mean, she'll take any draw off the Brooklyn Bridge just to go back to New York for a minute. You love this woman. You would love this woman, and she doesn't really care if she loses, and she has more money than God, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I do feel where sometimes the bonding kicks in for me is if there's bad behavior from a man, and then it happened recently, and my friend was sitting with me, and we had to call the floor, and he was attacking her verbally, and it was awful.
Okay.
So some of that camaraderie kicks in for me.
Just to watch out for other women's kind of.
Right.
Yeah. I see. Okay. So we've been talked about a lot of Vegas time before your life, and I would like to go back to your New York time, which
Okay.
you had a lot of time spent on New York City, a Big Apple, and what was your life over there, and how did you discover those underground tables, and yeah, I would like to hear that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I was in New York for 30 years, and I moved there from Los Angeles. So I've had two big moves in my life, and I was a writer and a fiction writer, and also had a life as a corporate writer. So I had my own practice as a branding expert and a writer in financial services, servicing Wall Street, and had a lot of friends in finance, and had edited an options magazine for 10 years and was close to a lot of traders. So I was doing all that work for 25 years in New York, give or take. And then one day I was invited to a corporate event, which was, now there are brands that are doing this globally, but this was about 10 years ago. I was invited to a corporate event to learn the skills of poker to improve my performance in my corporate life, right? Because a lot of skills in the game for women, not just for women, but especially for women, are extreme. Poker is a transformative engagement for women intellectually on so many levels, and a lot of that skill set is easily migrated into women's corporate lives. Negotiation, bluffing, mum poker, information warfare, reading the room, all of that. I mean, and 10 other things that women who come into the game and have robust corporate identities in any country on earth are going to improve their corporate performance. That's been proven. And so I went to this corporate luncheon, just was invited to come learn poker. I had a sprawling family in Los Angeles, and my whole family played poker when I was a child. And then on holiday family meals, we played blackjack with pennies, and my aunts and uncles were playing poker. And it was never my game. My parents were card players. They played a game called Pan. My mother played Mahjong in Los Angeles in the 50s. Yeah. And then Pan, which was, some people sometimes know it and sometimes not, but I'm not exactly sure what it's close to, but my parents were Pan players in Los Angeles casinos for years. So my grandfather was a poker player and died at a poker table in San Diego.
Ooh.
So there was all this card playing in my family, but it wasn't my life. Okay. However, I do feel like I kind of inhaled the culture of the social contract that is card playing. I think it went into my brain at a really early age, unconsciously. And my father played cards with us and was really tough on us. And he kind of gave me a poker face, so-called. I kind of have his demeanor when I play. But so I'm on my way to this corporate event to learn poker. I jumped on a subway in New York. I was irritated. It was freezing. It was the dead of winter. And I remember I was sitting on the train and I took out the flyer for the thing and I looked at it and I said to myself, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I was so agitated and so irritated. I didn't want to go. I was just like, what the hell is this? What am I doing? And I almost turned around and came back.
Ooh.
That I arrived at the thing. It was a beautiful midtown luncheon in a skyscraper in some financial company. And there was a woman that taught 80 women how to play poker in 2 hours, and white tablecloths and beautiful crystal. And we had a lovely lunch. And I was always a little bit of an outlier in my financial services life because, I'm a writer and sort of a nutcase. And, I'm around like all of these like corporate women and all their beautiful suits and whatever. And people accepted me because I was good at my job. And so we're playing poker and we play this game and she taught us how to play, and then we could win like this little goofy trophy, whatever. And I didn't win.
Okay.
I was really mad about it.
Okay.
And I was really mad. And then I was mad that this other woman that I thought was a giant idiot, I was mad that she won. And like just seeing her like scoop all the chips toward her just enraged me. Okay. That feeling I paid attention to. Okay. And then like 2 or 3 months later, I literally was sitting at my desk in New York. It was snowing again. And I looked out the window and I heard a voice, and the voice was like, you were really happy that day playing poker. Why don't you do more of that? And I was like, okay. So whatever that voice was. So the woman who taught us that day had courses in New York at an institution uptown called the 92nd Street Y, which is a cultural institution. Nobody learns poker like in a classroom, okay? Except I did. So I went and took Ellen's classes, and then I took 3 weeks of classes. I learned tournament style poker, and I met all these other women all from all over New York City. And we had these very sweet home games for like, I don't know, $25 buy-ins, $50 buy-ins. And then that's how my poker life started. And then I read Phil Hellmuth's book, and I read Annie Duke's book, and I read this book and that book. And I said to myself, like, I don't know, I can't explain it. I just knew it was something serious for me. I just knew it was a serious commitment. And I was such a pain in the neck when I first started. I'd be like, I was always tapping the glass with players. I'd be like, oh, there's no way I'm opening that hand. Like I was just such a brat.
Okay.
But then through my writing life, and then I found a free poker league in a bar, like it's called pub poker in the States, right? Like it's all over the United States. And so there's all these free poker leagues that you go and you play for points and you have fun and you drink and you play tournament poker. So I was in a bar poker league. And then at that point, through my writing life, I was teaching creative writing workshops in my neighborhood for an organization in New York called the New York Writers Coalition. And through my writing life, I met Matt Matros. Matt Matros then had 2 bracelets. Now he has 3. He's a very accomplished tournament player and a writer. He came into my workshop when I was training him, and then I didn't even know who he was. And then I found out who he was. And I called him up and I said, I'm an absolute beginner. Will you coach me? And he was like, sure.
When was that?
That was the beginning.
When was that?
I'm 67 now, so that I was like 57. It was like 10 years ago.
Okay.
9 years ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So I met Matt. He started coaching me. and then I was playing tournament poker, and then I, by accident, went to a Brooklyn warehouse one night to play a tournament, and there was a cash game.
Well, underground.
Yeah, of course. There was a cash game there. So I won $100 there, right? I'm like, yeah, this is my thing. Right? So like cool, forget tournaments, like whatever. And I actually knew then, just like the ROI on tournaments was just so fiercely horrible and difficult. So I played that one cash game that night. And then I started reading Ed Miller's work. And I met Ed, and I edited his 9th book, The Course.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just deep in his material, yeah. And he became my second coach as a cash coach. And Ed's catapulted me, right? Yeah. And then Matt Matros called me one day and said, hey, I've been approached to write this poker book. I don't want to do it. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, okay. So I write this poker book thinking I know so much. Compared to what I know now, it's embarrassing. But I mean, the book is beautiful and I'm very proud of it. And I will say it's singular visually. My designer was in France. There's nothing like my book in poker literature visually. Nothing. Okay. It's the most beautifully designed poker book out there. And it's a perfect book for absolute beginners. It holds beginners' hands. It has expert spreads. It covers 5 games. And the introductions on each of the sections that I wrote with more passion than I've ever had are a beautiful Valentine to the culture of the game. And I would say if somebody buys my book and doesn't read anything else but those introductions, that's what I think my family's card playing life gave me, is an understanding of poker as a social contract.
Interesting. By the way, that book, it's translated in Japanese. So
seriously?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Oh,
yeah.
my God. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
So I'll make sure that I'm going to put the, picture, and, maybe people are going to, read that. But yes, I didn't know you edited that. Wow. Amazing.
Wait, the Total Poker Manual?
No, the course.
The course. Oh no. Yes, I did edit it. And yes, it's a brilliant book.
Yes.
I mean, Ed is, he's just has a brilliant mind. He really does. And I was honored to work on that book with him.
Yeah. So you discovered New York underground cash game, and
oh wait, hold on a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just say, once I started. Okay, no, finish your question. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask what's going to happen the next. That's it.
Oh, okay. No, yeah. So I'm playing underground. I meet Ed. He becomes my coach. I'm playing underground and kind of knocking on doors, which was a very weird experience, and very aggressively finding games and finding the best rate games and good, honest, safe games, not always, but, and then figuring it out. Like it was a very, very magical time for me. Like just being a woman riding around, like coming home over a New York City bridge at 3 o'clock in the morning from a poker game, or walking down. I remember when I first underground spot, and I literally would just go to these games and I would just be like asking people, like, where else do you play? Where else do you play? Where else do you play? And I was really naive, I just didn't, I mean, I always asked about the rate because I was in finance or whatever. But I played in a game that was a 5-5. That was my 5-5-25 game. It was raked at max $40. This was like 10 years ago, but the only reason I made so much money in that game was because it was like drunk millionaires would show up, businessmen and whatever, and like it was like a $2,000. It was like $10,000-$15,000 on the table. I ran like God in that game, But yeah, so I was playing underground and just finding my way, and then I published the poker book, and through my poker book, I met Tommy Angelo, and then Tommy Angelo became my third coach. And for your audiences may know, Tommy is not just, but a mindset legend. And his book, Elements of Poker, which was published in 2008, is still a very, very popular poker book and an invaluable poker book for cash players, and not just. But so Tommy became my coach and is still my coach. And then I was moving through the underground scene, and some of the places there wasn't all like a seedy, I go up one flight in this old like apartment in like the 30s, like on 32nd Street in New York, like a friend of mine had an underground game in a bakery in Soho, and the bakery closed, and it was so beautiful. Tommy played with me at the bakery. If you ever talk to him again, ask him about the bakery game. And they would lower the blinds, and we would play poker. There was a woman who was a doctor who lived on the Upper East Side, and she had this beautiful game in her basement, and she fed us really well. So some of it was super seedy and like chilly and weird, and a little bookstore in Brooklyn, and a little this and a little that. And then I found my two joints in Brooklyn that I played at the most. And so I was just, writing by day, playing poker by night, and figuring my poker life out. And once I started working with Tommy, he said to me, "You'll never get to a professional status outside of a casino.
Why is that?
It'll never happen." He just said, the quality of play in underground games you will never get better effectively. You will never grow as a player, because the quality of the player is just recreational population. So to get better at poker, to get better at anything, you have to push up against people who are better than you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
it's that dynamic.
Okay, but for poker players, that's the best spot that you can play, right? You're surrounded by recreational and making money off of recreationals.
Right, except that the amount of money to be made there was limited, and the rake was high, and my game was never going to grow.
I see.
And I didn't want to have to travel, take a crowded subway to get to a game. And, I had to travel an hour or more. It doesn't sound like a lot of time. Some people drive 3 hours to get to a game, but, I was aggressively, getting on subways, getting in taxis, getting in this, coming home and, Uber, and, it was just a lot of work. But it was really a question of like, just to professionalize my mindset, my skill set. I had to play. I had to be in a casino environment, and I believed that. And for me, Atlantic City wasn't really an option. And so I just, I experimented. I started coming to Vegas. I grew up in LA, so I kind of missed the West Coast. I was sick of New York. I was sick of the snow. I love the desert so much. And I started coming to Vegas, and, I'd come for a week, I'd come for 2 weeks. I was just feeling it out. I'm like, can I live here? Can I do this? It's the wildest thing I've ever done in my life, except when I moved to New York. So this is like the second wildest thing I've ever done. And I was here, and I was just so happy. And I really had no idea what was coming toward me. I had no idea how hard it was going to get for me in terms of my poker life in general. But the aesthetics of my move to Vegas and being in the desert, I was thrilled.
Wow. Maybe it was a great idea that you didn't try Atlantic City, because I think maybe a year or two ago, Taj Mahal closed. So maybe that's something that, that place was kind of dying, but Vegas is just Vegas. It's always there's something going on. So maybe it was great choice, and also weather too.
Yeah, Atlantic City was never an option for me. I have a friend who grinds at the Borgata. I have several friends actually, and they do okay there. But there's no, I'm so spoiled here, say if I'm at the Wynn or I'm at the Aria, there's 5, 6, 7, 8 tables running, if my table is bad, and table selection is an absolute vital part of a cash game player's life. If the table's bad, I can change tables. If the room is dead, I can change rooms in the matter of minutes. So it's just so luxurious, and you have to, table selection and game selection is 9/10 of the law in live cash.
Well, from American person, it's even outside of poker community, does Vegas holds that statue of, city of, what was the name? City of Sin City? Something like that. It was just like,
Sin City.
Yes, just like poker, like a mecca. It's like the place you have to go. Do you think that has a culture status?
I do. Yeah. I didn't realize like how much of a company town, this is an old phrase in American culture, like a company town Vegas is for poker. Like Los Angeles is a company town for the film business. In the old days, you would have cities like mining towns or industrial cities in American
Automotives,
history.
Right?
Exactly. Those were like company towns for the auto industry or whatever. Vegas is a company town for poker. I kind of didn't understand that until I got here. I really didn't understand that. And I thought I was kind of a big deal, not that I just felt like, I had 3 world-class coaches already, I was smart about things. I was, kind of getting good very quickly and working very hard. I knew no one of another woman like me and all that. And I got here and I just realized, like, holy crap. Like, there's just, not only do I literally see every elite player every day walking around just to keep me humble, okay? But like, my neighbors, this average Joe walking by me, like, everyone plays poker here. Everyone is playing poker at higher levels than me. Everyone has, is playing, 8 different pit games and just gambling their brains out. Not everybody, but the poker culture here is just so intense. And that part, when one of your questions was what I didn't anticipate.
Oh, yeah.
It was that, just seeing everyone here. And now I'm really casual. Like, I saw Phil Ivey the other day. I'm like, whatever. I don't even care. I don't even care. The only person I have a little bit of reaction to is Eric Seidel, because he's a New Yorker, and I just love the fact that he's still like crushing the game.
It's amazing to see him. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I saw Eric the other day again, but I was really cool. He kind of looked at me and I just looked away, like I didn't even know him, I don't want to give him any power.
That's amazing. Yeah. The question I was about to ask is something that you didn't expect. It's maybe the culture, how people perceive poker, and what Vegas embrace as a poker. Poker is something they're mind and heart, something that they, for example, Detroit, Ford, GM, automotive, as you said in the film, is LA. And I never thought about that before until I actually asked you this question. But I guess Vegas is a poker. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, it's a poker. I mean, what I didn't expect, my game was decent in New York. It wasn't, today my game is just like light years past what I had in New York City, but I was solid. Tommy got me into a very, very tight style, which I was very grateful for. I folded my way to victory even in New York. I was working on mental game issues there, my detachment capacity, my focus and my calm. I'm way ahead of guys who are much, much younger than me. And that's really allowed me to be competing against much younger guys, but a lot of older, folks, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, I play with every day here. But what I didn't expect, what really surprised me, I had mindset leaks that really threw me for a curve. And so playing in a casino environment, I suddenly oftentimes felt inadequate, or I felt like these guys who are 25, 30 years old, they've been studying, the game in a certain way, or using the technology, or they're years ahead of me, or whatever. And that would get up in my head all the time. And I would sit down at a table and give, I told you before we started recording, I always give the Asian players too much power, the guys coming from, I just feel like, oh, they're just poker geniuses, because of course they are, because they've spent their lives in Macau, which they haven't. But I just give them too much power all the time until I figure out if they suck, how can I take advantage of that, right? But I spent some time getting through that trial and error, and it was very painful, and sometimes it was expensive. And I worked with Tommy on it, and finally, as I said to you before in our pre-chat in 23, everything I just became myself, with full agency and full confidence. And now I sit down, and there was a guy that I played with when I first got here, and he's solid. He's a little bit of a maniac, but not in his ranges, but just, he's so good. And I was so scared of him. And Tommy taught me how to stay out of players' ways. It's really, really simple. You don't have to engage anyone. You can control that all the time and even leave the table, just for your mindset and just peace of mind and who you're targeting, whatever. Because I'm not making money from other pros in the room. That's not happening. But I was at a table with this guy the other night, and I had come from the place of being so scared of him. And I realized he was sitting there with me for 2 hours, and I forgot he was there.
Oh,
that's how much growth I had. I forgot he was also not very active, but I had not only was I not scared of him, I literally, he wasn't even at the table with me. And that kind of growth as a woman in the game, for me in particular, and playing against much younger guys and guys with many more years in the game than me and many more years in casino play, when I feel that, I feel ecstatically happy and
Wow.
proud of myself.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. I like to touch on that, the nationality generalization, because Japan Japan is part of Asia too. But when I'm playing online poker and when I see other Asian countries, and I'll feel like Asians, yes, yeah, because they're usually a little bit looser side. And maybe because they have more money to spend splash, but and other countries too. Let's say if you get check raised by Brazilian guys, maybe they're just like I don't know, like having fun in a
They're
draw.
just having fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like
exactly.
if the German person and just just some
Right,
certain
exactly.
tight. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
definitely nationality bias to it, but it's interesting because I think, if I'm sitting down with someone like you and you are just women, fearless, and I have to be watch out because she's might be quite tight, aggressive, and if she's that big I might gonna fold. But that's something, that a strategy that you're using against us, right? You have
That's right.
the some sort of that's exactly like we thought about. Women is usually either super risk averse or just tight, not tight, like loose passive, little calling station ish. So you never find someone that over bluffing, I think, other than just going for the draw or something. So I'm not going to try to expose your entire strategy,
There's
but
nothing to expose.
okay,
Yeah.
but
No, I love your question, and I love how delicate you're trying to be. It's very sweet. Actually. I think it's easy to, like, a guy leaned into me the other day who we became great friends for 2 days, and he leaned into me and he whispered to me, he was like, "So is this your hobby?" And I just go, "No." Like that. And he goes, "Oh my God," like that. And so he wouldn't get in a hand with me. He saw how I played and like he wouldn't get in a hand with me. So he would try to, he stupidly was on my right and he kept opening and I just kept stealing his opens with like,
Oh,
I was opening nothing. I was opening like 2 napkins, because he said, "I'm not going to play with you." And so he would keep opening and I would just keep stealing his opens. Right. But yeah, I think, I came up watching Matt Berkey, somebody I know, and Christian Soto and some of the Solve for Why guys. And in addition to my own training, and I've been watching high stakes poker logged about 10,000 hours watching high stakes poker for 10 years. So my brain, even before I came here, it's really been shaped. I see other women who satisfy a little bit of what you're talking about, maybe the risk averse thing. I've never had that problem. If I seem risk averse, sometimes men think sometimes I will play through a purely mathematical lens for a certain hand, like in terms of implied odds. If I'm playing pairs, if I'll just look at someone's stack size, I'll kind of lean forward, I'll say, and someone will say to me, "Oh, just take a chance," or whatever.
yeah,
But that's a mathematical decision for me. It's not a risk averse or risk,
yeah.
whatever the opposite of that is. It's not that at all. And I am able to bluff certain spots. People give me credit for every ace and king between here and the moon. When Tommy sits down to play, oh my God, the terror he strikes in people's hearts. It takes a few minutes. People just assume he's like old man coffee. And, he just gets away with murder until they kind of figure out how good he is, but so generalizations are dangerous. And yeah, as I said to you earlier, some of the Asian women that I play against are just brilliant, brilliant players. One or two, the woman on the 97% BPIP, she was a little bit of an outlier. But yeah, I think women also just don't have the load of ego and are not, it just, I don't know. It's such an interesting dynamic. And then sometimes, honestly, gender just falls away. And we're all
Yeah.
just playing this game that is so hard for all of us.
Okay.
And sometimes men will apologize if they crack my aces or whatever. I'm just like, dude, come on.
That's a game. Yeah,
It's a game. Who cares?
yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think generalization also like outfit how they approach or the previous podcast with Daryl Kearney, he said how they stack chips, how they line up, or when they join the table, if they have a lot of small chips, meaning that they're more likely to splashing and more high VP, something like that. So small, many details matters, and that's what you're throughout this podcast you're mentioning informational warfare, how much information you can get, how much information you're not getting out, and that's something that people should watch out for, I think.
Yeah, no, the visual, you're absolutely right. The visual cues are fascinating because the minute I had forgotten, and this is something Phil Galfond said recently, that you make thousands of decisions over the course of a poker session. And I thought to myself, really, thousands? And then I realized he was right. But just all of the physical, everything you communicate, like you said, your clothing, your demeanor, whether you're talking, how many chips you buy in. Like I always buy in short. However much money I have, however many buy-ins I have, I always buy in short, very short, actually. I want to feel the table. I'm never sitting down to there are some of the guys I play with, and they take a $1,500 stack and stack it vertically, right? They like that kind of, I'm like, whatever. They're very tight players. I'm just like, whatever, dude, make yourself happy. So yeah, and then and you can really tell how someone's feeling about their game. If say they at a 1,500 cap, 1,500 cap game, and then they've lost say they're down to 600 or 700, so they'll take 400 in red and stack those vertically, and almost kind of just have their 2 or 3 little big chips on the side or whatever. But that, to me, the minute that happens, I know that they're not feeling how unsafe they're feeling in their game. Like that is the biggest broadcaster. It's such a subtle little detail. And actually, I called the guys. I 3-bet out of the small blind with queens, and he called me, and he was just having a really hard session. But he was the guy that had stacked his chips vertically, and I just knew how kind of bad he felt, and I sized my flop bet a little bit on the big side for reasons, and then he came over the top, and I kind of insta-called, and it was really just pure instinct. And the minute I called him, and I don't know what he put me on, he tapped the felt. I didn't see it, but yeah, it was just kind of paying attention to how fragile people feel over the course of the session, and what decisions and how they're going to get splashy, how fast they put their chips forward. Well, I'm sure you've seen this a million times. I mean, it's harder online.
About all the timing tells and stuff.
All the timing tells, exactly. When I play online, I have such massive. I purposely manipulate all my timing tells, and a lot of times that works. But it's it's that. It's just it's what makes the game just so interesting. There was one guy I played with who was really quite aggressive and just a splashy tourist, or a lot of money, businessman, whatever. But then over the course of the session, his body language got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, to the fact that he was leaning back in his chair and slouching and almost half asleep in his chair. And you're just not a warrior anymore in that position with that posture. Tommy writes about this also. But it's some of that. I try to, I never, I edge sit my chair. I have to, because chairs don't fit my spine, but I'm always sitting I have excellent posture throughout my sessions. That never changes. And I pretty much, I don't really play with 2 hands, but I try to just make sure some of that is consistent, and then, all that. But I love what you're saying about just myriad of details. And I think women are actually oftentimes paying more attention to those details.
I think women are really good at perceiving a lot of small, subtle things. I think women are good at communicating with other human being, and I think that's something that naturally, I think women's are more good at it. And we've been talking an hour and a half already, and
oh my god,
yeah, I know. This is amazing, but I would like to go through more important, not more important, but important questions that you prepared for me.
I have my document.
Yes,
yeah, it's okay.
well, I have a feeling we can just sit here and talk forever, but like, yeah,
Oh,
the one thing, yeah, I think I wanted to ask because for the Japanese audience who's trying out in Vegas and other places, but what's the bankroll and the living expenses like in Vegas?
um, uh, you mean for somebody who wants to move here and take on a full-time poker life?
I would say yes, and also someone, let's say, the World Series. Let's say that's probably the most common
The most
situation.
common,
Yeah,
yeah.
2 months. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I have a number of friends who are tournament players who come here, and everybody has a whole different, there's many different scenarios. I'm not an expert about it at all, and I would encourage anybody who's coming for the series for an extended period to reach out to almost anybody that they know, and a lot of pros, like tournament pros who are very even established. They can be very friendly online and will be very helpful. I have friends who just stay in hotels the whole time. They can afford to do that, or they get apartments. You know, 2, 3, 4 folks rent an apartment close to the Horseshoe. There's just or folks will rent a house, or the question of having a car, getting to and from. I would say vast majority. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but a lot of people just stay at either Paris, or they stay at a strip hotel, or they stay at a cheaper one. You know, there's some bargains sometimes, and someone like Alex Fitzgerald, who writes a lot about coordinating tournament life financially in his book. He's somebody I imagine folks can reach out to online. Trying to think of other tournament players that I know. Yeah, just or even some Japanese tournament players who have come here and done it and figured it out. Folks shouldn't be shy about just asking those questions.
Yep.
In terms of like having a hotel room, like a suite, like the Rio, for example, was an all suite property. So every room had a refrigerator, right? So I believe that, I'm not sure about the Horseshoe, but if you have a refrigerator, I think they have refrigerators, because then you can get Amazon, you can get Whole Foods delivered, you can take an Uber, and you can go shop at Trader Joe's. You can go stock up on food. You can go to Target. You can get some healthy snacks. You don't have to pay strip prices for food, all that kind of stuff. So there's ways to like get food into your room, breakfast. Yeah, you can manage all that,
Nice.
and it doesn't have to like break your bank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And in terms of making it, it's going to grinding, it's hard for Japanese people to get a visa, like a green card and other things. I don't think we have working holiday visa in the United States, but let's say somehow they have 1 year or something, they have a job or whatever, but they can go full time 1 year. Would you follow the Tommy Angelo's bankroll, 50,000 US dollars? Is that your kind of number
I
that
think
you?
that's one guideline. I think that you have to understand what stakes you're going to play. If you put money in place, if you have a job and you put a bankroll in place, like you're starting a small business, and say you lost every penny of it, if it wouldn't matter, like if you have a job that you're going back to, obviously you come here and you want to win. But if you came here and you didn't win 1 penny and you lost that bankroll, it wouldn't even matter in some sense, because it's not your life. It's not your life. You have a job. You're going back to a job. If you want to come here and win and sort of play a very conservative, tight style, which most of those pros do, depending on if you're playing 1-3 or you're playing 2-5, depending on how often you're playing, if you're a $50,000 starting roll for somebody who's going to be playing 2-5 every single day is reasonable. If you're coming here not to play every day, or to play 1-3, or to just get exposure for a year, I think you can play with those numbers a little bit. You just want to make sure that you have comfortable money, that
So
you're grinding against every day.
I think what kind of attachment do you have with the bankroll? If the bankroll is something that you cannot lose, or you can just replenish, is that word? Yeah, you can add on.
Replenish,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Right. Hopefully, if you want to do that for a year in Vegas, hopefully you have enough skill to do that.
Mm.
If you want to do that for fun and just have a blast and just see what you're made of, then the bankroll doesn't even matter because you're going back to a job. You know, you could come here with 5,000, you could come here with 50,000 or something in between, and then just have fun for a year. It just depends what your goals are. Ideally, you are, yes, replenishing your bankroll. Ideally, you're playing against your bankroll as operating capital, and that gets replenished.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the model.
Yeah. So
I would imagine that. I mean, again, I would just say anybody, and I would just say for your audiences or anyone who's for your audiences, and if they speak English or if they want to use a translator, and I will talk to anyone about my life on Zoom or and anyone that's connected to you. I'm happy to answer any questions at any time if folks want to reach out to me. It just depends what their goals are, but I would just say they should come to Vegas with skill. It's not even too much a money question, it's a skill question.
Yeah. And going back to the question I asked, what you didn't expect, all the preparation, all the bankroll and everything. I think the Darryl Kearney cited from the Mike Tyson's word, and I know that, you have all the plan, but plan goes away until you have all the plan until you get punched in the face. So
right.
So until you sit down, whatever REO or somewhere, and you put the first hand dealt, you don't know what's like. You don't know.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I love your observations. Yes, and that's true. And I've had many left hooks, to use a boxing phrase, since I moved here. Sorry with COVID, but the journey is never a straight line. And I have all the support in the world, and I have had the best coaches in the world, and it's been my journey, and it's not been a straight line, and I've had surprising twists and turns, both good and bad, and you just buckle up.
Yeah. If I use the word, Japanese term, then maybe you have to sometimes just kamikaze, right? Just like, right? Yeah.
Actually, the whole engagement is kamikaze.
Yeah.
The whole thing is kamikaze.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so beautiful. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And it's very it's dreamlike and kamikaze both together. So whatever that is.
Yeah. And I'm still recreational. I'm trying to follow your path, but if the people watching this, either you're Japanese community or because this is English and anyone can watch it, but
sure.
I would say that it's your life. It's better to do something and fail than never do and regret what would have happened if you tried, because that's the resentment will kill you. You just cry and think about it every day, and at night, what if? So it's better to just actually do.
I was thinking about this before I talked to you, and actually, I think I'm kind of glad. I sometimes regretted that I started playing so late, like in my middle 50s. But now I'm happy because friends that I know that started in their 20s and 30s, like their 20s, and they're like 40 in their 40s, and they're tired, and they're done, and they're leaving the game. Right? If I get, God willing, if I get like 15 beautiful grinding years out of my body at this point, I will be happy. Like, I'm kind of glad now I'm starting late because I can't, by the time I burn out, I'm just going to be dead, So, God forbid or whatever, but my family has long lives. But my friends in their 40s are tired and they're quitting. So I think live cash, Eric Seidel and others, 15 years, 17 years, 20 years, Eric's been playing for what, 30 years or more, 40 years maybe?
40, yeah, something.
There's some cash grinders in ARIA that I see who've been on the scene for 50 years. There's all kinds of scenarios.
Yeah. But first you have to try, right? You have to try.
You have to and you can't cross every, there's an English expression like dotting every I and crossing every T. Like what you said, you can't plan every last detail because then you're going to get punched in the face at some point or whatever. You just have to jump off the edge of the cliff and see what it feels like. And especially I think for younger people, because they don't, for me, I'm not trying to be an opera singer. And I think if you want to be have a poker life, something in you is guiding you toward that. That's very authentic. And I think honoring that is very important.
Yeah. And if you're younger, 21 and early 20s. If you fail, like,
Who cares?
yeah, who cares? And also, you can go back. It's much more time you have to, I guess, prepare. Other than, let's say you're in the mid 40s, you are married, you have kids, and you have big job and blah blah. You can't fail much. So yeah,
Right.
yeah,
There's no saying.
yeah.
I mean, that was Daniel Negreanu's story. He came to Vegas 3 times. He came and went broke and went home, and came and went broke and went home, and came.
Yeah.
Right. It took him 3 shots.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's on the tournament side. I don't.
No.
I
No, I think
I think
yeah, he played a cash too.
play.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he was
but I think
talking. Yeah, he was talking about Toronto days that he was kind of crushed too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a cash life is easier than tournaments, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. Is there anything else that people should know? Go to a cash game or like a casino. Any tips?
The one tactical aspect of it is always make sure you call ahead and put yourself on a list. So all the major casinos have phone numbers and lists. And say the Bellagio and the Aria during the series gives players 2 hours to show up. So if you want to play at 3 o'clock, call at 1 o'clock, and then literally show up at 5 to 3. And then you'll be at the very top of the list, and will be seated very quickly. During the series, the rooms are very, very, very crowded. Even if you put yourself on a list, you still may have to wait. But if you don't put yourself on a list, you're going to wait hours to get a seat. I don't think it's as crowded. I don't know what the situation is playing at the Horseshoe. I don't know if you can put yourself on a list. I have no idea how that room works. The WSOP area has a cash area, and then the Horseshoe itself has a poker room. So folks can go online and ask the casino in advance. Wynn has a list. Aria has a list. Bellagio has a list. I don't know about Caesars, but putting yourself on the list and figuring out how much time you have is the single most important part to just playing cash in Vegas efficiently. Because the worst thing, what you want to avoid is showing up and just having to wait to play.
I think that's something I've seen on X. People just go to the room and see the whole wait list, and they'll tell you, like, oh, there's 30 people on the wait list. But if you call beforehand, and you're already kind of somewhere up there,
you're very much at the top. And also those names on that list, a lot of those are call-ins, right? So at the Aria, for example, you look at the wait list, and all the names that are just call-in names, like just now, I put my name on a list, and if you went and looked at the screen, you would see that my name has a little star by because I'm not there. So it may be 30 names or 50 names. Actually, it's more like 150 names or 120 names during the series. A lot of those folks are call-ins, and a lot of those folks put their name on a list and they don't show up. So folks shouldn't just look at a long list and think, oh, it's going to be hours. But calling is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and you just call the number and say, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah. I would like to put myself onto the wait list on 2-5 or 1-3 or whatever. That's it.
Right. And you also are welcome to put your name on multiple lists. Like if you're a 2-5 player and you're happy to play 1-3 while you're waiting, say, I'm Sasha, please put me on 1-3 and 2-5.
Cool.
Or even higher if you play, Bellagio was running a 5-5 game with a capped 1,000. If you want to, you can put your name on on list, 3 list, 4, several games if you want to. They don't care.
But that's something if you're serious about. And also during World Series, the time is precious, right? Because you're only spending so much time in Vegas, so you don't want to just wait there. So play time for your convenience. I think that's absolutely vital.
Right. And then the trade-off, I would say, maybe there's a casino. MGM is like at the most southern end of the strip. It's not as convenient to get to, but maybe there's less of a wait there. And I forgot to mention the Bravo app.
Oh, Bravo app? Okay.
Yeah, the Bravo app is essential. So just download it. It's free, any phone in the world. And, you can, I don't know about the whole world. I don't know how this works, but Bravo gives you, shows you every casino in America, how many tables are running in every game, and how many people are waiting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's just Bravo, BRAVO, and you just I have it on my phone. And so, for example, say you're in Vegas, you have the Bravo app on your phone. and there's 50 people waiting at the major rooms, or 60 or 100, and say MGM doesn't have as many waiting, or Venetian, or the Horseshoe Poker Room itself, or Resorts World, or wherever, but you're going to pay a promotional rate, but you'd be able to get into a game faster.
I see.
That's a trade-off. That's the trade-off.
Okay.
There's a wild game downtown that's famous at the Golden Nugget, a 1-2 game that's uncapped. People sit there down with like $1,000 or $2,000 at a 1-2 game. The MGM uncapped games get wild. So there's some wild opportunities also if you just want to kind of go insane.
Cool.
And have some fun. Yeah.
So Bravo app and call-in is two most essential things for the Vegas cash grinders.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially if you're coming off tournaments, or you're trying to figure out, coordinate your tournament schedule with some cash play and all that kind of stuff.
Food, hidden gems for
right.
Vegas.
I have a list. Okay.
Yes. That's something that people always complain about when they go to Vegas.
These are not so hidden and not so secret, but I made a little list of things that I like here. Okay. Your folks can just file this away. And I know folks may be coming from Asian countries, but there's a restaurant for Thai food here called the Lotus of Siam, which is absolutely fantastic for Thai food. Also Thai food at the Aria Lemongrass is kind of famous and consistently fantastic. And great for big groups if folks are coming with their tournament pals. There's an Italian place not too far from the Horseshoe called Ferraro's, Ferraro. That's more like kind of New York style, kind of elegant, sort of feels a little bit gangsterish, and the food is gorgeous. Now on the cheaper side, if you go to Shake Shack, they're all over Vegas. No, hold on, because Vegas is expensive. You can get a $5 hot dog at Shake Shack. Seriously.
Whoa. Wow.
And then In-N-Out Burger is 10 minutes from Horseshoe. Okay. And Secret Pizza at Cosmo is not so secret. But if you've never been there, you go upstairs and then you go up again, and then you go behind a little thing, and then there's a pizza place, this tiny little joint, and it's pretty delicious pizza. I'm from New York, so I have high standards for pizza. But so yeah, I was trying to think of some like secret whatever, and I came up with nothing. But those are not so secret.
Yeah, well, definitely it helps because if people don't have any information like that, people are just gonna go to the casino food, a little more expensive side, and
don't do that.
It's just not good. And I think the food is something very important because that's something that you can control when you go there. Sleep, food, and exercise a little bit. But if you can manage the nutrition side, that's definitely helps you on the either tournament or cash, and just play better.
Yeah, and definitely there's absolutely reasonable food, really healthy food choices. You have to come here, and my friend comes and just does she sometimes just takes an Uber down to Whole Foods and just stocks up for a month or whatever. She just brings a lot of healthy food into the house, into her hotel room. So there's definitely a way to beat Vegas expensive food. The strip food is mostly it's just it's ridiculous.
Tourist prices, right? Yeah. I will now go to the audience questions. I asked if there's any questions for audiences. I guess you don't talk on the tables. The audience asks, do you talk on the players?
I personally, it just depends how I'm feeling. I never talk during my hands, and I never talk about my hands, and I never show my cards. With like once a year, I show my cards or whatever. So information warfare, which Tommy Angelo writes about beautifully in Elements of Poker, and everybody should read that book. I'm extremely friendly or warm if I feel like it between hands, but never during. And sometimes I'm really just quiet for like 2 or 3 hours.
Okay. I think that's important. Just information, just how delicate you have to, treat your information that you're giving out. So yeah, that's great.
And I would just say this also, what's important for women is, for me, what I love about poker is that it gives women permission. It's the one social context, and especially I think this is not just for Asian women, but for all women, but especially for Asian women. It's the one social context where women don't have to take care of men at all. They don't have to take care of male need or demand. They don't have to talk to a man. They can be quiet. They can stare at a man. They can be aggressive. They cannot answer a man's question. It's very, very empowering. and very different for how a lot of women are raised all over the world.
I think I forgot the one question. Yeah, females players. Yeah, I'm gonna sneak in that because you're a big advocate of the female poker players. Your X account is Poker for Girls, so definitely it's something that you want to advocate. And I forgot the question. What female players do you have any advice for specific female players? What they need to watch out for, and if they're playing live, because based on the research, more female players playing online rather than live because they feel safer in online, and I think they get less harassment and stuff. So if they're playing live,
that's definitely it can be an issue. I think women play online also for there's like 5 reasons that women may play online or may not play poker, having to do with money, bankroll, childcare, duties, being, responsibility in the home, all of that. But yeah, I would just say generally if women are playing live and they come to Vegas, they should just, again, make sure that the floor has their back. The global poker community now is locked on to women's issues. People are aware of it everywhere, globally. And women are going to get a lot more support from them. I would say if women have any issues at the table, don't take it on. Just immediately stand up and go get the floor. Do not upset yourself. Do not give it any energy. Do not take on men verbally. If men goad women and say, oh, show the bluff, none of that's fun and playful and innocent. They're trying to get information. They're trying to figure out how you play. So I would just say for women, especially younger women, if you want to be flirtatious and sort of use that, if you're skilled at that, do that. But otherwise, you just stay very contained, and I think it will serve you.
Mm-hmm. And also for Japanese community or other community that doesn't have language barrier, and if you're women and if you're kind of getting harassed, I think you need to stand up or just raise a hand, floor, and I don't know.
And yes, and it doesn't happen that often, I would say, but it really doesn't. It does happen, and it happens, I think, more for tournament women at this point. But yes, just get help. Just get some help.
Why is it tournament players more?
I just think there's more women in tournament poker, and women in tournaments just deal with so much verbal harassment.
Wow. Do you have
my friends?
Okay.
I mean, men will often say to a woman in a tournament, "Oh, did your husband teach you how to play poker?" Or, "Oh, are you playing this tournament because your husband's playing poker at some place or whatever?" Or, just awful things that women have written about that are said to them because the tournament context is so competitive and so fiercely, it's different because in cash, you can just keep rebuying. But tournaments, women take a lot of crap in tournament play.
I do think that a lot of the Japanese poker players playing in tournament, because of the legal issue we have, but we see a lot of female players and tournament players, and I do think that I don't personally have the experience, but maybe their boyfriend or husband just gave the money, they're just coming with blah blah, it's not good.
It's very insulting.
I see. So lack of respect as an individual.
Lack of respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also there's also been some writing about just some pretty creepy things that are said to women at tables, and it can get creepy.
I see. Anything else that women should watch out for other than verbal views? Anything like that?
I'm just looking at my list. That pretty much covers it.
Vegas itself.
I think it's a different.
Yeah, Vegas itself. Is it safe for women to walk around during the night?
Yes, it is.
It's safe.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. There's cameras everywhere on the strip, by the way. So I mean, it's a very surveilled city.
I see. But the reason why I ask is it's not just for women, but some players. I think it was male players. They got robbed. It's not like guns down rob. It's more of they're walking somewhere. I think there is a certain spot that a lot of Japanese players walk, and it's very safe place. So we're just like Vegas, blah, blah, blah. And I think people people just come in and just slash their bag and just like take it.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
no,
think
there is some isolated case. I know during World Series that can happen. I would say, like, when I leave, if you're playing cash in Vegas, like, just be mindful of how much money you have on you, or when you go up to your hotel room, who's getting in the elevator with you, or um, just I'm always aware of that, always. And you can get boxes at certain casinos, and there's ways to make sure that you're never walking around, depending on your level, and as a cash player especially. But yeah, that definitely can happen. And I've seen guys with like backpacks filled with thousands and thousands of dollars. So you want to just be mindful of it.
yeah.
You can get that $500 chips, you can have them in your pocket, you can not have them in your backpack, stuff, little things.
Yeah. It's interesting because if you have a backpack, if you're doing this, okay, but if you put your backpack in front, it's safer, but also it's saying that I have something to prepare. Not
You
not
look scared.
Yeah, you look
Yeah.
scared and you look more touristy, and that might going to provoke more, safety issues.
Yeah. And also if when I flew here with money, a lot of money, I had it around my neck, underneath my sweater,
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
little.
If people are flying here, people have been robbed on planes. So you just want to don't fall asleep on the plane. Hide your money in strange places on your body, in little pouches and stuff, and just be mindful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's something that if you're going to Vegas on first time, I'm pretty sure that in 2024 World Series, there's going to be the largest flock full of Japanese people you're gonna see because of
Oh my
this.
God.
Yeah, maybe you're gonna see a lot of people in the Caesars. Definitely a lot of people in the World Series. Yeah, but
Yeah, that's so
definitely this
beautiful.
is amazing advice you've given to us. And one more thing that the audience questioned: that what kind of speech play do you see the most often? Maybe it's just like, show the bluff or something like that.
Yeah, I find your question fascinating. Very little in my cash life.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of money in play, and the younger kids are very serious, and the online kids are very serious with their hoodies and their things, and nobody's talking to anybody. I'm very connected to the old way of playing poker. So yeah, there's very little actually, and mostly it's just conversational, and occasionally like speech play formally in terms of people using it as a tool, I would say 0.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Did I miss any questions? I don't want to.
Do you want me to give you my book list?
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. That's what I was about to, because that's something that I added after I submitted your email. The questions. Yeah. So definitely. Yeah. Any book that you recommend, please.
Okay. This is just my personal favorites, and everybody you can see. Okay, so I recommend Exploitative Play and Live Poker by Alex Fitzgerald, who's a genius, one of the best content writers on the scene today, and players. Zen and the Art of Poker by Larry Phillips is a Bible for me. Elements of Poker by Tommy Angelo. Any of Ed Miller's books, obviously, and particularly Poker's 1%, which is Ed's drill down on a frequency-based approach, which is my approach to poker, which I adore. Poker Plays You Can Use, volumes 1 and 2 by Doug Hall and Ed Miller. Doug's an old friend of mine, and the visual design of the books are older, but Doug left Vegas, was a brilliant player on the scene for a while. The Poker Face of Wall Street by Aaron Brown is a brilliant, like a gorgeous examination of the evolution of trading and poker going back 100 years, and then the LA poker scene, and it's just a beautiful book. Trading and poker are identical. So I invite folks that that are trying to get better at poker also to pay attention to traders on X and their feeds, because it's the same intellectual engagement, trading and poker. It's identical. And finally, my book, obviously, and I think that's it.
Can you tell us more about that Total Poker Manual? What's the book about?
Yeah, it's really Weldon Owen had a series of this publisher in San Francisco. The Total this, the Total that, the Total Book of Hunting, and they wanted to do a poker book, so I got involved. So it covers 5 games, and it really holds the beginner's hand beautifully, especially for Hold'em. Like if you know absolutely nothing about poker and you read this book, you will you just step by step by step by step by step. It has expert spreads, and there's a lot of women. I created spreads for women players over the last 20, 30 years, which I'm very proud of. And it's a beautiful book, and it's a kind of a great starting point. Has strategy in it, obviously, but it's a good book for beginners and beginner intermediates. And if any of your audience reads the book and ever wants to talk to me about it, they can email me, certainly.
Amazing. So yeah, before I, let you go, I just want to ask what's your 2024 look like? Any project, any plan, anything?
Well, you know what I say, the future is a rumor, right? So today I'm going to play poker, and my goal, I would just say for anybody taking poker seriously, don't play for the money.
Oh yeah.
I go toward every game with the beautiful intention of hoping to make excellent and superior decisions, and that's what I hope for. If you get attached to the financial aspect of it, even if you're very, very successful, it's just it's gonna scramble your brain.
Yeah, play poker for the love of the game. I think that's something I always tell people. Just don't get into the poker. Don't think that this is just easy, money scheme that you can just click away and make money. It's not like that. So.
Right. I mean, I do think it gives people, especially women, a lot of independence and freedom. And I think that's why people become professional players, because there's nothing like it as a lifestyle. It's a very hard way to make easy money.
Yeah, that's definitely, yeah. That's an easy way to say yeah. So your X account, Poker for Girls, that's something that you always use. Yeah, you use that.
And folks can also find me on the RecPoker platform. I have a bi-weekly study group called Mastering Mindset. It's now open to all members. You don't have to be a premium member on the Rec platform, and I really love teaching mindset strategies and tactics, and folks don't really understand kind of how those dots all connect. So that's been a great experience.
Great. And your website, suttonstories.com. So if you go there, you can find more details about your stories and also the information about the book. And I think that's your professional website.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sasha Sutton, thank you very much for your wonderful time and wonderful insight of what Vegas like, because you can find those information from Japanese people, actually, yes, but their perspective and your perspectives might be different, and your room recommendation and food recommendation, book recommendation, and I hope that during World Series, or even anytime, I hope someone's gonna reach out to you and, hey, I saw the interview and blah blah blah. I hope that one day it's gonna happen. So.
Oh, I thank you so much for your time, and it's been really an honor to talk to you. Are you coming for the series?
No, I don't think so. I hope. I'm definitely on the road. I do work in Canada, so I don't think in 24. But let's see, because I just met someone who's going to the World Series, and yeah, just for fun, for the weekend maybe. So if I'm going, yeah, definitely, because before the World Series, the buying was so high, but now there's $500, $1,000. It's just some weekend fun stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, the energy at the series is incredible. It's just nothing like it. Yeah.
Really great. I definitely have to go. So, but anyways, thank you so much for your interview, and
thank you.
Good luck to your table today.
Thank you so much. I need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.